Digital ministry can be hard and confusing, so let's see if these two vlog pastors can help simplify it.
Welcome to the Vlog Pastors Podcast, a podcast all about the stories and strategies of sharing God's love in the digital world. Now, here are two pastors that love to put a camera in their face and walk around in public. They are the Maverick and Goose of digital ministry, Jarrod Brown and Joshua Verwers.
That's right, I'm Joshua Verwers.
And I'm Jarrod Brown, and this is episode 66.
66 of the Vlog Pastors Podcast, and today we are heading into the danger zone because we are going to try...
No.
Apparently, I can't crack a joke when we're trying to do our intro and setup.
This is serious.
Welcome, everybody.
Well played, man. I didn't see that coming at all. Oh, my goodness. Welcome to the show. What a party.
Welcome to the show. What are we supposed to be telling them when we welcome them?
Well, you do the thing, and you tell them...
Oh, yeah. Whether you're watching us live on YouTube, catching the replay, or even, I guess, you can watch the video on Spotify, or you're listening to this on your favorite platform, thanks for being here.
Yeah, and you can help shape the conversation every Wednesday. This is obviously going well. Every Wednesday, 10:30, in the comments. We don't know what we're talking about ever. Please help us.
Yes. So speaking of shaping the conversation, this week, this is actually a message that we got from Augie. He had responded to a question that I had put out on Instagram a few weeks ago, asking for topics and show ideas. And he said, what are some basics, complete basics, recommended to start ministry in the WWW, the World Wide Web, the digital ministry? So after I completely derailed us by thinking, I saw Maverick and Goose, and the song was in my head. It was rolling. I couldn't help it.
Before we fly off into the danger zone. Oh my goodness. Too much.
So, yes. Okay. Here's the thing. We were talking about this even before in the pre-show, the pre-show,
about coffee.
About coffee, and how even with coffee, like we are coffee snobs. Is that fair to say, Jarrod?
Amen. Hallelujah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Like in my kitchen, I have a drip pot espresso machine combo, so I can do espresso. So I can make all of my lattes if I want to. I think I've done it twice. I have done shots of espresso several times, though. So I've got that. I also have a Keurig. I also have a Nespresso. I also have a French press and a Chemex and a vacuum siphon.
Ooh, you have a vacuum siphon?
I do have a vacuum siphon. Yes. And I'm hoping to then... Oh, and I've got a gooseneck kettle. Although I'm hoping to take this up a step and actually get a heated electronic gooseneck kettle.
Yes,
so one that is digital that already sets the temperatures, so I can select like number 3 for my pour over, and that's what I want, or like number 4, and that will be for my French press, whatever I want. That's the goal. And that is on the shopping list and the wish list that my wife and kids, I have not shared with them. I need to. You guys ever do that where you like hop on Amazon and the app and you create a little list just so you can send it to everybody and be like, if you're wanting to know what to buy me for Christmas, here's a big list.
Well, my wife sure does.
Yeah. So that's
she
kind
knows
of
how to do that.
Yeah, and you've got most of the same stuff at your place.
Yeah, I think my wife would say, and I'll speak for her here, oh, he bougie. So you are bougie.
Bougie.
I have all of said items except for I don't have we don't have a espresso machine anymore.
Okay.
We've gotten rid of that, and I don't have the vacuum siphon. The in-laws have one. We'll go down, and that's a special treat for us.
Yeah.
But no, all the rest of them are in full activity. We only have, because we were talking about it beforehand, there is AeroPress, and then there's drip coffee. We only have drip coffee at the house. We don't even keep AeroPress. It's out.
Yeah.
We only have drip coffee for company.
Oh.
Large parties over, if you have 10 people, then you're going to be doing Chemexes till the cows come home. You're going to just be in there in the kitchen making.
For sure.
So we do the drip coffee. We don't even offer it. Whenever the people walk up, and we have this coffee bar, if you've ever seen any of my videos, we have these signs pointing towards coffee, and it's illuminated, and there's all the different racks of coffee that are all the grinds and cups. It's all on display. You're having drip coffee tonight. So anybody who walks over there and wants to get them a Chemex and have a taste of some of the grandiose coffee, no, you're getting Folgers in a drip because it's cheap and it can be easily mass produced. Well, hey, but you know what? That could be something for us because that is a very basic entry level thing that you can do, because coffee at its core is the coffee grinds, the water at its right temperature and the time of exposure. If you have those three basic ingredients, much like if you have in your digital ministry, you're going to put out some quality content.
Yep. And that's kind of what we were talking about. Like, that was a perfect segue, and it was completely unintentional earlier when we were talking about that. But it is a perfect segue to what we do because, yes, we are kind of coffee snobs. We're also vlog pastors, which means we've been doing this digital ministry game for a while now. We've got hundreds of videos in our backlog of trial and error stuff. And some of them, it tastes like gas station coffee. And others, it's all bougie. But at the basics of every single one of these is us with a camera talking. Like, we're sharing something in video format. And I think that's sometimes when I think about this, and I mean, Augie's here in the chat, and so we're kind of answering that question from a few weeks ago. So if we wind up not even answering it the way that you wanted, Augie, now's the time to kind of correct what we were saying, but it was, what are the basics, the complete basic recommendations that you would have for digital ministry? I want us to kind of look at two different formats if we can try to answer this, because he didn't give us as much direction with the question as maybe we would like, which means we get liberties to kind of go where we want with it. But I would like us to look at the concept and like the theory behind digital ministry and what are the basics that we need for that. But then also the practicality. Okay, now that we've got the ideation and the theory and the concept secured, now how do we actually implement that? How does that sound for you for a strategy for today's episode?
That sounds pretty good. Do me a favor, because I can already tell in answering this question, I want to take a couple steps back and take a running start at it, because I do have, well, we can get into it, but I do have opinions that might help, just some things that we worked through in the early days of, the basic levels that would kind of give them a slingshot. I feel like we might address that being. Let me just go for it. Let me just slingshot one thing at. Yeah, I truly believe in order to get to the basics that we're talking about. I think if you're not in a research phase right now, like if you haven't just come across the idea of, oh my goodness, there's a whole digital world and I want to be involved in that, and I feel like it's something the Lord's called me to, all of those precursors to it. If you're not initially doing that, then you need a swift kick in the pants to say, get off your duff and get out there and do it. Yeah. Because the assumption is, and here's what happens. I'm going to give you advice here in just a second. I'm going to give you the ABCs, and Joshua's going to give you more in-depth ABCs of how this works. How it works.
Yeah. Because
it works. However, I don't implement all that stuff.
Right.
There's no way. Like my church, my ministry, our Grace Fellowship, we do not implement all the things that would cause us to be a thriving ministry online type of thing, to be offering our full, capability. And that's kicking the pants, and that's some faulty thinking, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on with that. So, precursor to all of the stuff, I would have to back up and say, do you really do you really want to? Because
Right.
there are some parts of this where it's nice to say, man, it would be great to have a digital ministry to be able to be speaking into this space.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you've realized that it costs something.
yeah.
Do you want to sacrifice that?
And that would be honestly like the biggest starting point that I put out there is, it's the Simon Sinek book, Start With Why. Like, why? Like, why do you think you want to get into digital ministry? Why are you doing this? And I think it's important to understand the why, because at some point, inevitably, the grind is going to get to you. The outcome that you thought you were going to get isn't going to be there. The results are not going to measure up with your expectations, and you're going to feel like hanging it up and throwing in the towel. But having that why will keep you going.
Absolutely.
And so it's like understanding and not only starting with why, but sticking with the why. It may be the step one if I
I
were to
think
try to do
it's
it.
the thing, man.
Yeah.
I think it is truly the thing because that flared up last week.
Yeah.
That's what we got back into again last week. It was like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why do you feel like quitting? Why do you feel like ministry's not effective? Why do you feel like all these things? Well, yeah, these are the reasons. Now let's go back to your why.
Yep.
What did the Lord say?
So, and that was something I want to jump into that because this is one of those where I'm going to push back on common YouTube wisdom and thoughts and suggestions and strategies. And we had kind of talked about this last week where, what we're doing is digital ministry is a sacred mission. It has been given by God. It's, called by Him, for Him to do this. However, we're trying oftentimes to put in secular principles for a sacred calling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to fall flat on its face. Like, are there secular principles that can be used in the sacred? Absolutely. Like, I mean, it's not really, I guess it could be considered a sacred thing to keep a clean bathroom. But in more than that, like that's just conventional earthly wisdom. Like, you want to have good customer service, make sure that your restroom facilities are clean. Like, there are apps out there that talk about and rate the worst places to use a bathroom. Like, this is a real thing. So there are, secular principles, worldly principles, common wisdom that's out there that we can use. However, that doesn't mean it's always going to apply. And here's where, like, even Vaughn had said, when it comes to like ABCs, the A is really about the audience. And that's where I would agree and disagree. I would agree if we truly understand who the audience is. And when you think about what are we as Christians called to do, everything we're called to do, we're to do it as we're doing it unto whom?
The Lord.
The Lord, not our avatar or certain
I was gonna ask
person. It's like, how many times have you heard that? Oh, you've got to have a channel avatar, and that person is who you're creating this content for. Okay, Christian, you're making that content for God. Like, that's who you're making it for. So ultimately, He's the primary target of everything we do. Like, when I'm preaching a message on Sunday, yes, I hope my church gets something out of it. But if they don't get something out of it, and if I don't get anything out of it, but I know it's what God wanted me to minister on in the first place, I know that He got something out of it because He got my obedience to it. Mm-hmm. So first and foremost, that's where I think it really comes in, and that can help. Because then it comes into a case of, how do you know that God is pleased with what it is that you're creating? Well, guess what? The YouTube analytics are not going to tell you that. So that means we shouldn't be focusing on the YouTube analytics. We shouldn't be focusing on the views.
Isn't that so backwards, though? Because it's how they've taught us to evaluate our channels, whether they're growing or not, whether the video did good or not. There's a whole thing of analytics, just like what you were talking about. But if you were to strip away the good, earthly, humanistic reasoning, analytics, we're going to learn how your video's doing, see how people responded, audience retentions and stuff. If you were to peel it back, in a spiritual sense, what are you looking for? You're looking for the opinions of man. You're looking for
people
pleasing. Did they like it? Did they like what? Oh, they don't like it when Jarrod comes in and starts talking for, 10 seconds. Well, we need to cut out that 10 seconds. What if that 10 seconds is what God wanted you to say?
Yeah.
Was he pleased? Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's where I mean there has to come in a little bit of like a self-awareness
Hmm.
and a balance to that as well, because yes, like God is calling me to my local church. Like that's who he's called me to, primarily. So I know that at least that church I'm called to and that I'm to minister to, I'm supposed to minister to them as though I'm doing it unto and to the Lord first and foremost. So it's like it's with him at the top level and then with them. Now, if I wound up, because we're here in rural Iowa, if I'm trying to preach all of these messages and my church demographic, I'm on the lower end of the age scale. So we're talking most of us being like 40s and older. So if the majority of my messages were using like TikTok cultural references that nobody is going to get and understand, then I'm not being effective. And so it's understanding, I think, even more than just the audience, as maybe the audiences of who we're called to be ministering to, because this is digital ministry. So who are we called to reach? Now that starts with knowing, is this really God that's called me to do this? And if God has called me to do this, how and to whom has he called me to do that? And I think that's an important distinction that we need to understand. And it's not that the specific audience that we're targeting after on the human side isn't there, but it's making sure that we're not putting them above God. Because and Vaughn brings up, I just caught this out of the corner of my eye, he brings up a great point. When we look at the Gospels, those writers had avatars or specific groups of people that they were ministering to. And yes, like they did. Like you can see that with Peter, really called to bring the gospel to the Jews, whereas Paul's really called to bring the gospel to the Gentiles. And that's where there's this division in the fight amongst the two of them because they're using different methodology. But even at all of that, there were things that both of them were saying to that specific audience that the audience didn't want to hear.
Oh my! I was just thinking that, man.
But they needed to hear it.
I was just thinking that. I was thinking, could you imagine being Paul, modern day Paul? Let's say he's gonna make a video to the Church of Corinth.
Yeah.
And he's having to say to him, listen, let's go to 2 Corinthians. I don't know, somewhere around, the 11, 12, 13 mark, where he starts saying things like, listen, if you don't get these things in order, you're not going to just see me come, oh, he's strong in speech whenever he writes. I will come in power.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And could you imagine making a video like that, knowing that the audience is going to hate it, but still, like, well, maybe not hate it. You don't know how they're going to respond to it, but the Lord has told you to send that message. I think that is what we're called to. This is me personally. Yeah. I don't want to go too extreme here, but I feel like those types of messages, yeah, they're in vlog, they're fun. Ours, they're going to be bounced around. We're going to try and keep people's attention so that they can receive the nugget, the gift, if you will.
Yep.
That's on the inside of the message.
Yeah.
And man, you said something last week, and here was the unlock for me, and I think it's part of the basics for anybody else moving forward. Our ceiling is your floor. You said you alluded to it just a second ago. If you want to operate and live in this earthbound system, if you want to take YouTube's best practices and all of the gurus' best practices, and here's what's going on, well, then you need to expect to yield their fruit, the world's fruit.
Right.
Therefore, you're going to good information, good stuff. Don't get me wrong, but you will need to hustle. You will need to grind. You will need to, make sure that you're hitting these key metrics. You're going to make sure people are on for certain periods of time. All their good advice, and you will need to please, because that's part of the deal. But if you want to live in the earth, a heavenly system, this was the part that got me last week, then we should expect a kingdom response that comes. Just how that plays out is like, okay, yeah, you may be crashing and burning in your metrics or whatever it is, but you should expect that the person that God designed that message for is going to be impacted in such a way that they are forever
Yeah.
changed. I mean, did you hit 10,000 people and they said, they hopped on for 10 seconds? They were like, oh, well, it'd
Right.
have to be 30 for YouTube, wouldn't it? They hopped on for 30 seconds and said, oh, that was a good video. Or do you want to hit one who to the core of his or her being is forever done? And
Right.
they have given their lives to God and they will go on to reach millions. It's like, man, yeah, we can either expect human standards and metrics and we can live bound by that system, or we can live bound by another one.
And it's not to say, this is not for us dismissing that what the world does and how the world does it is wrong. It's if that's the beginning and end of what you're doing and how you're accounting for it, like if you're a Christian content creator and you're sitting there and you're thinking about your next video based on your analytics and crafting it based on the analytics. Keep in mind, YouTube has even said all of our analytics are human driven. Then all of your decisions are human driven decisions. And we are to be driven, we are to be led, we are to be guided by not humans, but God. Yeah. Now, if we acknowledge that there are things that the world uses and ways to capture the attention of people so that God can capture their hearts and minds, hey, let's do that. Like you see that in the Apostle Paul. You see him sitting there and all of these different gods. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to start talking about the unknown God. So he's using what was already capturing their attention and he put a God spin on it. Or you can fast forward and you can see where all of a sudden the hymns started to be written after essentially just hijacking pub music. You know, it was like, this is what people are singing along to and they're liking. All right, let's put biblical lyrics behind this. Yeah. Let's do that. Or radio ministry, television ministry, digital ministry. Like we can use the methods as long as we make sure that the message is still God-given. And that's where I think if we understand that, then it's like, okay, this is the beginning and the end of everything we're doing should be based on God. Now, if God is speaking to you and he's saying, go check your analytics because there's something there.
Right.
By all means, do that.
Well, I've heard something, Josh, into your point. I've heard something in the last couple of weeks coming out of creators, Christian creators, where they say, let's not make this I don't want you to over-spiritualize. Let's not over-spiritualize this. And while I understand that, because let's use Moses, for example, that's the one that's coming to mind. He needed Jethro. You know, he's getting all of this heavenly revelation. He needed Jethro to come along and say, listen, home skillet, calm down a little bit. You need to put some things in order. You need to have these systems in place. But that's not the norm of Moses's life. If you make that, I guess what I'm trying to say is this. We can say, don't over-spiritualize it, but nobody reflects on the stories and goes, do you remember that moment when Jethro came in? Oh, man, and just, set everything in order in Moses' life? God, that's the story that I remember. That's the story that I want to tell. Right. No, you remember the seas parting. You remember the commandments. You remember his arms being lifted up. You remember meeting face to face with God. You remember those things where like he was led by revelation. I don't think you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need both. We need Jethros to come along. We need the YouTube, gurus to mention their stuff. But I don't think Moses was, and I know this, I don't think Moses was guided by that earthbound wisdom. He was guided by this heavenly presence. I don't know how else to put that. He was guided by heavenly God. His attention, his audience was of one.
Well, and even so let's take that Moses story and hey, we're coming up on elections here and, being in Iowa, this is something that I've been inundated with it and I'm in it. And I'm probably in the top tier of ministers who have looked at the biblical implications of voting and what should we and shouldn't we do. And there is biblical guidance, whether people want to agree with it or disagree with it or not. And that comes from Moses' father-in-law when we look at Exodus 18:21. And it says, but select capable men and appoint them as leaders, such men that fear God, tell the truth, and hate covetousness. And then you appoint them to be rulers over the tens and the hundreds and the thousands. And that is earthly, man-made wisdom. But yet it was, and he was in Moses' life for such a time as that. And that was something that they used that to help provide that guidance and the structure and the governmental organization. And so there are those moments where, yes, we could and we should be using the secular principles, but they should come from a spiritual and a sacred drive. Like it has to have that purpose behind it. And that's where I know, me personally, I have been one of those where I have chased the numbers and the analytics in digital ministry too much. And you can go back and you can see it on my channel when that happens, because what you will see is an abrupt stop to all content creation, because God is doing a refining and he's saying, hey, you're chasing the wrong thing again. Hey, you've got to reset. You've got to refocus.
Isn't it funny?
You need to dial back again.
Isn't it funny, Josh, how he builds into us a bogging down or a burning out? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, because we're working by the world system. It doesn't pay. It doesn't pay. It doesn't yield dividends. But like whenever we're in the flow, we're doing what he's told us to do. Like we're ready to get out there, pick up the camera, make another video, whatever it is that he wants to do. But whenever he's gotten us sitting down or moving us to a point of, you need to chill out for a second while I talk to you. Sit down, son.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think part of that where it comes to me, and it is that throttling back. It's the, bogging down. It's like, hold on, you need to relax. You're going to overdo it. You're heading down the wrong path a little bit. We just need it's often just a minor course correction. And it's those little things, the small adjustments to that rudder makes a big change in the course that you're heading. And what oftentimes happens with me is, again, coming back to the why. Not is why has God called me to digital ministry with the emphasis on digital ministry, the emphasis being on why has God called me? Because just because the Sean Cannells and the Nick Nimmons and the Roberto Blakes and the Tim Schmoyers, just because all of the YouTube experts are saying to do this, doesn't mean that God is telling me to do what they're saying. He may have told them to do that, but he's not necessarily telling me to do that.
That's right.
And so that's where it takes me resetting and saying, okay, what am I supposed to do? He called me to digital ministry. So what is it about me and my style and my abilities that God is using in this? And that's where I think there's some power for us to understand that we don't have to do it like everybody else. Like we don't. We're not the only vlog pastors out there.
Right.
Now, we might be some of the only ones that call ourselves vlog pastors, but there's a lot of vlog pastors. And there's others in the chat that I would consider vlog pastors. They may not consider it because what they do, they don't see as vlogging in the style that we do, but they've got their own unique abilities, their own unique callings, their own unique giftings. And so it's like they've got to tap into that. And I think that takes coming back, beginning and starting with the why. Why has God called me to digital ministry? What is he wanting me to do? And that's where I think it becomes a little more difficult with the what. But I think it's important for us to start to look at that and figure out, how are we going to do this when it comes to this digital ministry? So like even with my local church, like we're a small church. I can hear big conferences and mega churches and what they're saying and how they may recommend, that we would do, with like a mega church conference saying, hey, here's the growth strategies. And there may be principles and elements in their growth strategies that could help us. Mm-hmm. But if God hasn't called us to be a 10,000 person church, I shouldn't implement everything that they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's where it's not only understanding and going back to the why has he called us, but what is the end of this? Like, how do we measure success? And that's where I think the other thing is we can't be measuring success by earthly standards. Acknowledge them and see them. Like with a church, Your giving is a measurement of growth. Your attendance is a measurement of growth. It's not the measurement of growth. So with YouTube or with digital ministry, the views are a measurement of success. The abilities and maybe the quality of the content you're putting out would be a measurement of success, but it's not the measurement. I firmly believe that the measurement of success for digital ministry is faithful obedience, doing what God has called you to do, which is why I would fully throw myself out there and say that there have been a lot of times I have been very unsuccessful on YouTube because I have not been faithfully obedient. I have done the wrong thing. I have put out the wrong thing. I have went after the wrong thing, just like in life. So what do I do now? Refocus, reanalyze, get back to the basics, do everything we do as though we're doing it unto the Lord. There. That's
there.
thoughts on that.
There. I said it.
You want to get to
right.
a couple of these comments real quick? Let's grab a few of these in here.
Yep.
Let's see. It was, Vaughn was sitting there. He said, when you're looking at the Gospels, those writers had avatars, specific groups of people that they were ministering to. And he says, I'm with you and I see where you're coming from on that. Augie says, one of my friends is putting his sermons up with clickbaiting style questions like preaching on marriage, a title, should she make me a sandwich?
Sorry.
It sounds like something I would do, and no, Augie was not talking about me, but he very well could have been. Because it does sound like something that I would do. But Devon's saying, wow, I wonder where that line is so you don't go too far. Yeah. And Augie's saying, no idea. He answers the question, but it's clickbaiting for sure. Vaughn also says that he got into some trouble with some folks by using clickbaity intros for a sermon. They completely turned off, didn't listen to the sermon at all.
Yep. So that's my opinion, guys. That's the risk you run whenever you do clickbait. So here's our options, and I have to lay this out. I'm gonna be brutal and be frank with it. Okay, be careful of comparison. Just right out of the gate, be careful of comparison, because if this gentleman or lady, I think it's a gentleman, is using, because you said if he's using clickbait and it's inside of his video, he is clever. I've seen Josh do it. I've seen me do it. I've seen it cause people to click on the video, and if they got value out of it, it's beneficial. They're seeing views and it's growing, that sort of thing. Guard your heart that it's not comparison. Because amen, hallelujah, they found something that caused someone to go, yeah, should she make me a sandwich? Oh, wait a minute, this is not what this is about. I really need to listen to this. If it's not, and you run the risk, say you're the person doing it, and you're like Vaughn, and you might have gone too far with your clickbait. It autocorrects because people go, wait a minute. This was not inside of the video. This was not edifying. This was not beneficial. And it like I said, it autocorrects things. So I will say, having been in this, gentlemen, guard your heart, and ladies, as you're out there, guard your hearts. If you're a creator and you see somebody who's posted something where it's just taken off and you're like, I don't like that. I don't like the way they did that. I don't like but you look in the comments and you see that people are actually being touched by it. Yeah. So may not be the case. This may be total clickbait, maybe a total gimmick, and I yield to that. But I would take a look, if I were you, into the comments and see what people are saying to that person and see if they're actually being ministered to.
Yeah, and again, here's another thing, that what may work for one won't work for another. Like where Vaughn was saying that he got into some trouble by some folks using a clickbaity intro. Like I will use... If I've got time to really dive in and set out a whole sermon series in there, I'll let my sermon titles be a clickbait kind of title. But the intro is more of a YouTube hook where it's connecting the title, the clickbaity title with the meat and the main point, and how do I do that? And oftentimes, like even with my intros, it's doing it in almost like a question format or a storytelling format. And it can be longer because, of course, it's sermon. You've got a captive audience at church for the most part. If people are listening back online, I don't expect I'm going to get full plays of anybody that's not already invested anyways. So those are numbers that I never check. Like I don't think I've ever checked how many plays like our sermons get online unless somebody has asked me specifically about it, and then I'll pull it up and show them, and then I've forgotten like immediately because I just don't care. And even, hey, here's even at church, I don't really care how many people show up. I've preached to nobody before. Like I'll do it. And that's because even when there is no human there, apart from myself, God is. And that's getting back to the basics. I'm still called to do this. If nobody else showed up, that's fine. I'm still called to do this.
Let the pews and the rocks cry out.
Yep.
Joshua, there you go.
It's like, I will still preach. And of course, I got something out of it. But yeah, that whole thing, and I do understand that. I also see where I've seen some of the YouTube wisdom out there that Christian creators have used and adopted, and it has frustrated me.
Yeah, I see that, yeah.
Like, you know what you ought to be doing that will really help your channel explode? Cover a hot button controversial issue, because people love controversy. And I see Christian creator after Christian creator making that stuff, and I'm like, I sure hope I wasn't your audience, because you just lost me. Like there's
That's
already
the risk.
so much negativity in the world. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go down that route. Now, if God has called you to it, more power to you.
Yeah.
But he obviously didn't call you to reach me, because he wouldn't be calling you to reach me through that means, knowing that that is repulsive to me. And so it's not going to draw me in. It's going to repel me. Now, I'm not everybody. So I fully am aware of that certain people will be called to that. It's just, that's where there's the big caution of, just because they're saying to do this, and that's what the common wisdom is, even if it's not even secular wisdom, maybe it's sacred wisdom, maybe it's coming from a church conference saying to do some of these, maybe it's coming from vlog pastors to say, do this thing.
Exactly.
If God has not called you specifically to do it, ignore us. Like, don't do it. So I think Augie even mentioned something. Yeah, he just came back from a youth conference and had to shrug when he heard small groups. We are a small group. Yeah. Well, and I've thought that a time or two when I hear small group ministry, and I'm like, our whole church is small group ministry. Like, that's what we do. We got a small group that meets on Sundays, and then we got a small group that meets in the middle of the week. So it's just, how do you define small groups? So that's the thing. I think when it comes to the theory, the overall, how do you even approach digital ministry? I say, get to the basics, get back to why God has called you to digital ministry, and focus on that. And don't let go of that focus. Like, that's the whole write the vision, make it plain so those that read it can run with it. Like, understand why he called you and why he called you to digital ministry. And so it's, I think, understanding that, that would be very powerful, because in those moments where we've done it, Jarrod, where we start creating, we get into the grind of things, or maybe we have a video that is a Facebook profile video that winds up exploding and we absolutely hate it. And it causes, production paralysis, where it's like, I'm just not creating anything because this is not the direction that I wanted to head. This is not what I want to do. I think coming back and saying, okay, but why did he call me to do this? Just because I got frustrated with this doesn't mean I have to give up on all of it. So what has he called me to? Is it time for me to maybe refocus, reanalyze things, take a step back, and make sure that I've got the why figured out?
Yeah.
Let's get a couple orders, and then I want to get into some practicals.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm in.
Vaughn saying, I know several creators that blew up by doing a couple controversial videos, but got frustrated because folks weren't there for the regular content. Yeah.
Dude, you're running the risk. That whole game is a risk because who are you drawing in those controversial? Like, say you're called to, like me, for my scenario, I'm supposed to share my life. More's caught than taught. As Josh said last week, I am the gift. Well, God in me, Christ in me, the hope of glory. Anyway, you know how it goes. So that's my deal. If I hop on here, if I hop on here and start doing pastor reacts to whatever our controversial issues are of the time, I'm drawing in an audience that's not who I'm supposed to be. That's not what I'm supposed to be doing. If I sit here in this chair and talk about my opinions, pontificate about my opinions on Matt Chandler, who else is in trouble these days, whatever church is revolting against whatever other church. Yeah, no. I have seen it done well. That's the risk that we run, though. That's who you might draw in. I have seen it done well. I've seen pastor reacts to, certain controversial topics, and he laid out scripturally, like, this is where we fall on it. You may not be on this, on the same side as me, but this is what the word says. This is how the pastor is reacting because the word of God is. And I thought it was masterfully done. But you run the risk, Vaughn.
Yeah, and I think I've got one of my favorite videos I actually did, just because it was easy to make. And
you did Pastor Reacts worship music?
Pastor Reacts to worship fails. Like, I just had so much fun making that. I mean, it didn't blow up, but I had so much fun, to the point that I've thought about doing more Pastor Reacts, just because it's fun and it's easy. But again, before I do that, what has he called me and why has he called me? And is there a way for me to fulfill the why through this method? If there's not, then there's no point. Even if it's, well, just because I want to. Well, guess what, Joshua? It's not all about you.
It's funny how the Lord looks upon the heart.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it really boils down to, if we're talking about motives before we go into practicality, because it's a motive thing. It's like, why did you create that video? Well, did you create it so they got more views so that you grew your influence and expanse on YouTube? Yeah. Well, then that's what you're going to get. Get all the troubles and the headaches that come along with it.
Right.
Now, make your next video be better than the last one.
Yeah. Yep.
Or did you make it unto the Lord, and he gets to do it what he wants, and he blesses who he wants, and he brings the increase, and yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brian saying, when I pray about things concerning my wife and household, for instance, I'll ask my wife what she thinks about that topic. Then I bring that new info to the Lord. Great way of doing it. Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's a godly filtration system. Hey, there's another coffee analogy for us. Getting the right filter in there will also help. I didn't even think about that. The filter.
Look at you.
Ooh,
Look at you.
Keep doing that. He says, ultimately, I will do what the Lord instructs, but I know I've considered my wife's heart in the matter, which is good because, I mean, he's commanded you as a husband to watch over your wife and to help protect her. So making sure that you're not doing something that she's not okay with is good. Perhaps that it's similar when considering new things we learn from the YouTube gurus. Absolutely. But doesn't it begin to get to the point where you start questioning if you heard correctly? Absolutely. But there seems to be no audience, but you know they are there, but they aren't. Yes, I do think it will get to a point where you'll start to question if you heard correctly. And all that takes is just getting to know that voice. And that comes from practice and repetition because it's a relationship. It's like I've got such a great relationship with my mentor, Dr. Mark. I don't have to talk to him even on a weekly basis. I still hear his voice all the time. Josh, are you obeying Christ? Like, I know his voice. I've gotten familiar with him. I know my wife's voice. I know my children's voice. We can be in the middle of a grocery store, and if a child yells out, Dad, I know whether it's my kids or not. Like, I know that voice. And that's where you do get to know God's voice in that way. The thing is, now we're in YouTube, so we're in a different environment. Because me, knowing my kid's voice in home life, but if I've never went to the grocery store with them And then I heard Dad, I may not know. Because of all the extra noises and distractions that are out there, I may not recognize that. I may know that it was a child. I may not know that it was my child. So that's where, because I've been there and I go everywhere with my kids and I'm around them all the time, and we're always shopping and in big situations and areas, I know their voice in those situations. As we start to do more of the YouTube and the digital ministry, and we start focusing in and trying to hear God's voice in those, and sometimes missing the mark helps us to find the mark. It's like when, you basketball analogy. Why? Because I was just watching something about Steph Curry and how he's the greatest shooter in NBA, even though I don't watch anything.
Okay.
Dude, like that guy he doesn't miss a shot. He doesn't miss a shot, but I guarantee he's practiced a million of them. And Michael Jordan talked about that, where it took hundreds of missed shots to wind up landing the shot. I'm able to hone in on what it is that God wants me to do 300 and some odd videos later, because I've taken those 300 and some odd swings and I've got a lot of misses in there. And because there's a lot of misses, I'm able to hear it a little bit more clearly. So yeah, I think there's something that comes with that. Even sermons that I've done that have fallen flat, and it's like, maybe that wasn't so much God. Maybe that was more me. Maybe I was just a little angry and I decided to let a little hellfire and brimstone fall on some people. And then you realize, okay, that lands wrong. Now we got to course correct. Anyhow.
Yeah, no, it's like a rite of passage. It really is, because for the very point that you were saying, it's a correctional tool that the Lord uses sometimes. It's like we get to hearing his voice. We know his affirmation. We know his love. We know he's leading us into something. And then, if we get out too far ahead, or we get wandering down a wrong path, it grows a little quiet. We get to looking for things. And I think I've totally been there, Brian, where that God's put something on your heart. You've heard his voice, he said it, and the audience isn't there. Yeah. And the questions start to arise, and he begins to hone on you a little bit and work on things and break stuff off that you didn't need. And it's a rite of passage, man. I think if you are moving forward and you are putting your head down and you're going to make this YouTube thing happen, and the Lord is saying, stop, son. Just stop.
Yeah.
Stop. That's a totally different conversation than God has given you a word. God has given you a ministry and a sense about where you're headed, and you're not finding the audience. Those are minor critiques where he bounces you back, but you're going to know in your being, in your spirit, man, if we can go so far on the Vlog Pastors channel, you're going to know in your spirit, man, are you doing your own thing because you're seeking fame, you're seeking a fortune on YouTube, you're going to hack in with the Gen Z, you're going to beat them out and take all their money, you're going to become rich and famous on YouTube, or and he's saying stop it. You're going to know that voice, and you're also going to know the one that's encouraging you to say, listen, we need to make some minor adjustments here, so this is about me and not you, but come on.
Yep.
It's a rite of passage, man. Like I said, I have been there when it seems like there is no audience, and there is. He's either working on the messenger or the message as it comes out of the messenger, but there is an audience. If he's called you to a ministry, there is an audience. That audience may be smaller or larger than you think. I don't know. I don't care. But there is an audience.
Yep. And God will bring them around. One way or another, they'll find them. So, okay, so let's get into some practicality of these basics, these ABCs, because the ABCs of practicality when it comes to actually doing the ministry, the digital ministry, creating the content for the interwebs, the World Wide Web out there, the ABCs in practical terms are not aperture, bokeh, and color science. There we go.
Good job. Nice.
What would the basics be? What would the basics be for this when we think about first things first? What is the first thing for digital ministry that Christian content creators need to focus on? The first practical thing that they would need?
the first practical thing,
Yeah.
I feel like Shia LaBeouf needs to come in behind me somewhere and be like the whole, just do it,
Just do it.
come on,
Yeah.
just do it. But there's something to that. If you are to have a digital ministry presence, then do it.
Do it.
Then do it. Now, the gurus can argue about how often to do it, but consistently show up in the space that fits you.
Yeah.
Writing, pictures, video. I'm not gonna go on a long rant here. I think that's kind of it. If you're, I just found Twitter. Joshua introduced me to Twitter, and then once Elon Musk, started posting a little more regularly, and I heard that some other controversial figures might be posting on Twitter. I hopped on Twitter, and
Wait.
I love it. It's not
Jarrod loves controversy. Apparently, if you create Christian controversy YouTube channel, Jarrod will be your audience.
I mean, apparently I do, because I've watched all that stuff. Anyway, yeah. No, I don't subscribe to any of them, but I'll watch every last one now.
You're one of the wide net.
I'm the wide net. I'm not going to commit. But
hey, maybe if you start the controversy, but then you lead it into a positive, maybe Jarrod would be your audience. I still will just ignore it.
No, but Twitter, I didn't realize it. It's very much a written format. So just using my church, for instance, let's just use a basic church. At a basic digital ministry, you have no idea what you want to do. Well, I would advise, as I advise all churches in my sphere of influence, and I get to, pastors that I love and get to hang out with, and they say, hey, what are you doing online? Well, find a Facebook. Still, you've got a Facebook account, develop a page, start posting consistently on something.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
Yeah. What's God putting on your heart? What is it that he wants you to share? Now, how are you going to be able to share that?
Yeah.
It's we're going to start with why, but then we're going to, and here's where I've kind of broken this down over times. I've said, start where you're at. Like, where are you already at?
Yeah.
Like, if Jarrod's not on Twitter yet, don't start on Twitter. Where are you
That's
already
my
at?
empire, man. I'm going to grow it.
So, start where you're at and use what you've got to do what you can. But that's the whole do it thing. Like, I love how Diana Gladney, she talks about this, and I think she's even got shirts and merch that says learn and do.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've learned it, go do it. Like, that's
Maddie used to have
the struggle.
Learn, make, repeat. Yeah.
Yeah. The struggle is that so many of us, we just want to sit in the learning stage and keep learning and keep learning and keep learning and keep learning and then never do anything. And from a biblical perspective, I'm like, aren't we to be doers? So do something with what you've learned. So yes, like what you're saying, start where you're at and just do something. So if you're a church, where's your church already at? And your church is, most of us in this day and age are already somewhere. Now,
even if that's Google, let me hop in here real quick before you go into it. Even if that's Google and you are there, somebody has put you online. Google knows your presence. They've driven by with their Google car and identified that that's your church or that's your, speaking specifically to a church. You can go on Google and you can simply ask your congregation to leave a review. There's a first step right there. If you want to figure out how to rank higher on Google, then have your congregation speak to them one time, just say, hey, if you like this place, if you like being a part of the family, we're going to kick you out unless you leave a review. I mean, you can go online and leave a Google review. Second, follow that up, very, very practical on Google. You can have your congregation weekly take pictures of service. Just get them to do a candid shot of service and then post them on Google. You're going to be, if you have regular content being posted, do as I say, not as I do, on Google, it will begin to rise to the top.
I mean, some of these are older ones, but I mean, there's at least something, and I know who took this photo. I can see. But yeah, it's like you can claim these things. Like, one, just the simple stuff of, hey, at least hook it up. I mean, Google alone, like you're saying, this is a practicality thing. You got there, make sure that at least your number's updated. Is it the right address? Have you got directions, website? If you need to edit anything, you can typically call in and edit, because you can, if you haven't already got somebody that claims that, you can wind up claiming that. I'll make sure to put mine in there too while I'm thinking about it, just so turnabout is fair play. It's like just making sure some of this stuff, I don't even know if that's the right number or not. But it's like you just click on some of that stuff and get a few things on there. So here's one where somebody that was at our church took a photo and added it to there. It's like you can do some simple things like that. That's Google.
That's the Google car.
Google did that one. Although it's an old one. That was an old one. But yeah, it's like you're already somewhere. And because you're already somewhere, just do something. And then if let's say you're not anywhere. Let's say you're doing a digital ministry, and it's not your church's ministry. It's you yourself that you're doing it. You're not pastor of a church. You're not doing something like that. And you're trying to figure out where to go. This is where I will say kind of understanding at least that avatar. Who has God called me to? Am I the Apostle Paul called to the Gentiles? Am I the Apostle Peter called to the Jews? Who am I called to? Once you know that people, where are they at? Because that's the next thing, like go to where they're at. And so if you're looking at that, where is that audience? The people that God has called you to. Now, you may go there and then realize, oh, wait, who I thought God was calling me to, that's not actually who he's called me to. But, if you know that there's a certain demographic that he's called you to, like if God's called me to the 40 plus people, you know where I'm heading? Facebook. If he's called me to the 18 to 13 or the 13 to 18 year olds, you know where I'm going? TikTok. Why? Because that's where the demographics are at. And that's
the Chinese my money.
And I'll give anybody, they can go ahead and take it. Chinese can have all of it. They need the gospel too. So it's like, but you go where the people are at, go where they're at to try to reach them. And so where has he called you to? So that would be kind of the practicality, starting where you're at and going where you can. So like, if I know that God has called me to, let's say that God's called me to, we'll just arbitrary number, say 25 to 45-year-old women. That's the ministry that he wants me to get. Where do you think I should go?
Pinterest. I don't know. Where are you going?
Either Pinterest or Instagram. Like, that's where I'm going, because that's where the primary demographics would be. If he's calling me to the same age, 25 to 45 men, well, now I'm probably more likely going to either Twitter or to YouTube, because there's a larger demographic of those in that area. It's like, and honestly, YouTube, let's just be frank, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, so everybody should be there. And that's the thing. If you're like, I don't know where God is calling me, like, I don't know. Come on, vlog pastors, you were trying to give me some practical tips, and you said I'm supposed to go where I'm at. Well, I'm nowhere. Well, you're listening to this on some social platform, so you're obviously somewhere. But I'm nowhere. I don't even know where my audience is. I don't know where my audience is. Okay, go to Google or go to YouTube then. It's the second largest search engine in the world, which is part of the parent company of the first largest search engine in the world, Google. And so go there, and they link back and forth. Now,
Google refers YouTube.
Yeah, Google refers to YouTube. So it's like, just go there. Like, that's where you want to start out. And then as you start to make some stuff and you slowly start to see where that audience is, then you can help go where you're going next. So then next, it's like, okay, well, if I'm getting all of these, young teens that are finding me on YouTube because of my short videos and they like my content and my editing style, maybe now I do need to figure out where they're at. And if they're over on TikTok, maybe I should play around with that a little bit more. If they're a little bit older, then maybe I'll go over onto Facebook now. Maybe I'll go to, Instagram. Maybe I'll spend more time on Twitter if I've just got little nuggets that I want to throw out there. That's where I think the practicality, we overcomplicate it too much, where we're trying to, again, set in the, like you would refer to it, the research stage, the learning stage. We're just stuck in there. And it's like, stop thinking, start doing. Just make something and put it out there. Learn, do, repeat the process. Once you've put one out there, like I did that with my first sermon, write the first sermon, preach the first sermon. I didn't like the first sermon, but I listened to the audience that was there. I started to hone in on the things that they liked, the things that they didn't like. Found some people that would give me constructive criticism on it. And then what can I improve on? And then it's like, okay, now we go. Now we start to improve.
I think you hit something. I would, in the future, moving forward, I'm probably going to be recommending this as of this moment, just making a stamp on it. When I preach a sermon, when I get finished, and I'm like, maybe I'm uncertain about it, or maybe it didn't strike me that I got the full nugget communicated. I will first seek the Lord, and if I don't get immediate confirmation of like, son, you just chill out. You're like, I'm pleased. If I still have anxiety, if I still have something going on in me, then I have a group, a very, 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 very small group of people. Not yes people, for sure.
Yeah.
People who will tell me, but I know they hear the Lord. I know that they walk with Him, and I know that they will be bold enough to tell me, hey, listen, that landed, or whatever, and they will give me feedback. I think we need that, because I have that in YouTube land with you and Diana, and
and here's another practical aspect of that. It's one, in physical ministry, it's a lot easier to find those constructive criticisms. It's easier because you've got other people around in the church and stuff. On digital ministry, often you feel like you're out there by yourself. Who else is going to do this? Yes, you want to find some people that can do that. And over time, you'll be able to find
does take time.
Those people. Oftentimes, we don't have it up front. I didn't have it up front. I will tell you exactly what I did. When I was early on, I didn't have a relationship with Jarrod or Diana or with Trey or with Jason. I didn't have people that could and would call me out on things or say, hey, I like this, I didn't like that. And I had no idea where to go on it. So the first thing I did, I spent money to two people, paid people, to actually analyze and look at things. Like, I wasn't even 6 months in on it, and I went down to Video Marketing World for the sole intention, went to Dallas, sole intention, I want to get face-to-face with these people who know what they're doing, and then basically just have them roast my entire concept and ideation. And I want to tell them what I'm trying to do and hear what they would suggest, and then see what bears witness. And then beyond that, I was hopping on to at the time, there was a lot of people, YouTubers, that were doing like channel reviews. And so it was a lot of these that I was going in their live streams, and I was paying super chats just because I knew if I gave them $5, $10, they're going to see my comment. And if they see my comment and they're doing channel reviews, they might be willing to review my channel. So when they're like, hey, I'm going to be doing some channel reviews, $10 real fast, review me, please. And then I'm paying attention and I'm listening, and they're going and in the live stream, checking my channel out and ripping it apart. And it's like, that's what I needed, and that's what I wanted. I was willing to spend the money just to get somebody to do that. So that's something that oftentimes, if you don't have those relationships that you've built up where people do it just because they love you, they love what they're doing, and they support it, and you've got that friendship build up, just say, hey, could I like give you $5, $10 just to analyze my channel, look at it, to watch a video? Like, I mean, we will pay, people will pay money to promote their video. Why won't they pay money to have their video critiqued?
Yeah.
Like, really, what would be better in the long run? To spend $5 for like a Facebook ad to try to push a video across, or to spend $5 to have somebody watch your video and then give you some constructive criticism? So that may be another practical step to look at. And that's not me saying this because I want you all to try to find me. I'm saying this because that's exactly what I did. And it was beneficial to me because it was somebody that was looking at different aspects of my channel and saying, it's a little disjointed here. Your description isn't clear. You don't have a channel trailer, a go-to video that would help to draw people in. You don't even have a YouTube banner. I had one, but those type of things. that are some basic stuff that people don't.
No,
So
that's a great point. I would encourage anybody who's curious about this just to not live in fear about it. Be bold. Be bold with your ministry and go out there, because I was one of the folks who watched people like Josh get reviewed and go, man, I want to give $10, but I don't want them to pick my stuff apart. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. 'Cause you know how bad it is. You just need somebody to say, this is this issue, this is that issue. But I want to encourage you that you can't do it wrong, because we didn't have this hive mind, that we didn't have this think tank put together in the early days. We didn't have a friendship yet. And I got into some relationships with some YouTubers that were not good. That sounds bad. That's not what I mean by that. They weren't solid people. And in those exchanges, my mind was saying, well, everybody on YouTube's weird, which is something I've had to kind of grow through over the past, maybe just creators in general are kind of odd. The Christian community is a little odd, and real preachy, real violent sometimes. I couldn't, anyway,
Right.
I couldn't,
Yeah.
I couldn't get through. But some of our relationships were like, nah, it's not for me. So eventually, ducked out of those. And I want to encourage you, if you're hearing me in this, in that you will find your community. There are like good people who are who they say they are. They are the ones who come across on camera. They're not two-faced. They're not different than they are. They don't have an on-camera personality and then a behind the scenes. They just are. And when you find them, and they find you in the comments section driving through Iowa or however that works out, then lay hold of them, and you will get there. God will guide you to get there. You can't mess this up, but be bold in it.
Yep.
Take a
And
coffee visit.
And I'll give another practical step on getting how to build those relationships. And we've talked about this in a previous one. When you're trying to build those relationships because you're on YouTube and you don't have it, it's that whole biblical principle of show yourself friendly. And I'm missing the passage that's on there.
Yeah, that one's obscure. Get it?
But it's I can't pick it out. It's like just floating around here somewhere, and it's not quite there. The thing that it brings back to my remembrance on this is kind of how I was able to start to build these relationships with people. I was showing up in their comments section. Like I found them. I searched for people who were kind of similar to kind of what I wanted to do. I mean, it wasn't exact, but it was like a little bit like this and a little bit like that and something like this. And then I started showing up in their comments section. And instead of trying to get value, I tried to give value. I tried to be an encouragement to them, because I know if I was going to be friendly to people, eventually friendly would come back to me. And could you say that was a form of manipulation? I guess, sure, whatever. If you can say that I had ulterior motives behind it, sure, whatever. I mean, are you blessed to be a blessing, or are you a blessing because you're blessed, or which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, my motives weren't solely about me. It's like I wanted to encourage people. I wanted to show up in, Jarrod's videos. I wanted to encourage him and say, hey, keep making this stuff. I wanted to show up in Trey's and say, hey, keep making this stuff. Like, I enjoy it. It's fun. I enjoy watching it. And now I do that, not as much as I used to, and just a time thing, but it's like still there. So if you don't have the relationships already, and you're still wanting to build that relationship, go show up to those people.
Well,
Hop
as a
in
basic
chats like this.
Yeah, since we're talking basics and practical, I mean, maybe you're a prophet in the wilderness by yourself, but I would say on the whole, for most Christian creators, you're probably going to find a community of creatives, Christian creatives, that are helping one another out.
Yep.
It's essential.
All right, before we go, I want to give one more practical. Let's say you actually have learned, you're actually going to do, you actually have your why already set, and now it's time to record. There are 3 basics that you look there: your audio, your lighting, and your video. And they are that important in that order. Audio first. Make sure you have good, clean audio. People will endure a dark and grainy video in 480p resolution if they
Somebody
can at
will.
least
I
hear
will.
it. They have to be able to actually hear it. So make sure you have good audio. If you're recording on your phone, don't leave the phone 13 feet across the room and talk into an echo chamber. Like, spend $10 on Amazon and buy a lavalier mic that you can plug into the, headphone jack, because your phone is old enough that it still has a headphone jack. Or you buy a dongle because everybody wants to get rid of the headphone jacks. And at least now you can create one. Like, get some audio.
On those lines, I saw a kid the other day. It was a Gen Z kid, and I thought, why didn't we do this before? This is simple thinking. He had a camera, so he wasn't recording off of his iPhone, and he had a voice memo, just like the kids do with the little lapel mic thing.
Oh yeah.
He had his cell phone, and he was walking around, and he was doing the interview. Hey, so what do you think about? Yeah, are you going to buy Bitcoin or are you not right now? And then he would go back and forth. It was like, oh, why haven't we done that? Like, that's so simple. That.
Make sure you have good audio. Once you have good audio, now make sure you have good lighting. Like, the main reason that Jarrod and my videos look so crisp and so clean and so clear here is because we have lights on, right? It's like the lights are on. If the lights are off, you don't know what's going on. Like, and it becomes harder to hear or harder to see. But you turn the lights on. Lights help with the video, but you got to have it. Now, if you don't have lights like we've got, open up a window, stand next to a window. Just don't record in your closet with the lights turned off. Unless you were going for some moody, spooky type of a setting.
Stranger Things?
Stranger Things.
Anybody?
Wait, we got to get you upside down now. So that would be the thing. Audio, lighting, then video. And quite frankly, these things, they're good enough on video. They'll work really well. Like, they really will. Actually, here, you know what? I'm even going to do this. Here's an impromptu thing, if I can get this to work. Jarrod likes the voodoo magic that I do occasionally.
I love this. Watch this. Look at that.
So this is coming directly from, it's coming directly from here. Directly from here. And this is video. Like, it's the phone. There's one light I've got up there. There's another light I've got up there. There's a whole bunch of Funko stuff. There's some more. Like, anybody getting motion sick yet?
This is awesome.
It's like, this is...
I love that.
It's a smartphone. It's a camera. Like, that's all it is. And it does good. Oh, what? You wanted to do that one?
Yeah, I want to see that one next.
I'm upside down. There we go. So, I mean, it's decent. It's good. You can start with something like that. Just your phone. So, start there. And then upgrade if you want. Upgrade to a point and shoot type camera like the ZV-1 or something bigger like the A6600 or something even bigger like Jarrod's A7S3. But start where you're at. Use what you've got. Do what you can and then upgrade. Audio, video, or audio, lighting, video, lather, rinse, repeat. Once you've got audio, lighting, and video done, go back to audio, improve the audio some more, then go back to lighting, improve the lighting some more, then you can go to video and improve that, and then keep repeating the process until it's dialed in. I don't need to upgrade my microphones anymore. Last couple times I bought microphones, I'm like, why did I even buy these? Like, I made a video about why did I even buy these? Like, the one I had was good enough. Why did I even buy the rest of them? Yeah. My lights are good enough. I don't need to upgrade them. At some point, I don't know, I might. But if I did that, it would be for a specific reason because I would want something smaller, less of a footprint maybe. I don't know. Like, it works. So there's more practicality for you. ABC, stick to the basics. Just keep it simple. And there is so much tech out there. Like, quite frankly, you don't need a $400 Shure SM7B with a $500 or $600 Rodecaster Pro to be able to hook it into unless you're going to be doing a whole setup like this and God's really saying, yeah, go ahead and drop that money. I mean, you can start with voice memo recording. You could do a podcast using this and just record straight into it, especially with an app like Anchor, which will let you record straight from your phone. So it's
Will it really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm doing that.
So you can start with that stuff. It's the barrier to entry for digital ministry is so small. We overcomplicate things because we just try to learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. And we want to skip from preschool to our doctorate. And we forget that there's 18 years of education that need to go in there. So in the digital space, it's like, start here before you turn to here, and make a video on one platform that you're already on before you try to make a platform or make a video and content for every platform.
Yeah.
Any other final shots that you got?
No, I was just thinking about, I am researching voraciously about building a deck. And there are other projects, other little handy projects that I should be doing right now that would increase my skill set before I get to the deck. But I am immobilized by researching building the deck. Yeah. And it's either the deck or it's nothing. And I think if I could take a little bit of my own advice that we're given today, maybe we can do some of those smaller projects as we grow into the ministry or the work that we're called to do. That's it.
Yep. All right, let's finish off with a few more comments here. Dustin saying, sorry I'm late. Hello, good to see you, Dustin. Glad
What's
that
up, man?
you are here. Augie saying, need a plan and time basics. Oh, man. That's going to be another one.
That's a sore subject.
Plan and time basics. Yeah, I don't know. Have a few people who can give constructive criticism. Absolutely. Yeah. And Brian saying, where do I find something like that? Because I'd like to hear from those that have a similar vision. I found you guys because you are vloggers who do ministry and own that you are doing vlogs. Then he says, maybe I should do something like that with the channel reviews. Would you guys do something like channel reviews? I have.
That'd be interesting.
I have in the past. We probably could. That might be an interesting little segment that we could.
That would be fun.
Add to this.
Let's do one of those next week or something.
I think.
Brian, why don't you go first?
Brian, if you want us to review your channel next week on the vlog, we will put it in as part of either the pre-show or the post-show. We'll put it in there so it won't stay up for the whole podcast. But I'll do you one better because I'll make sure to record it and then I can send it over to you in like a Google Drive file. So at least you've got infinite replay on that too.
No pressure, Brian.
If you want it.
Have something posted up there, though, bro.
If you want it, you just got to let us know what you want us to review. So send us the links. You can hit either one of us up on Instagram or drop it down here in one of the comments or something like that. So, yes, that is interesting. And said, thank you, guys. He said, the problem with learning and learning and learning, etc., without doing is actually just become something that just entertains you.
This is true. I'm watching deck building. It's fun.
Yes. So yes. And he's like, really? No way. That's amazing. Yep. We'll do it. We can do that next week. And yeah, just hit us up on Instagram, at Joshua Verwers, at Jarrod and Jessica, or is it Jarrod and Jesse?
Jarrod and Jesse.
At Jarrod.and.Jesse.
I'm kidding.
Just 2 dots in between. But you can find him there. So yeah, we're there. And I actually think we've probably even down in the description here, I'm sure that here on this page somewhere, we have links to both of our YouTube channels. And if you go to those channels, I guarantee we have links to our socials over there. And if Jarrod hasn't updated his, then I guess we're going to have to roast his channel too. Anywho, that's all we got. So I guess until next week, stay blessed, enjoy God's best, and yeah, see you later.